Welcome to Ethos Effect Podcast.
Welcome to the Ethos Effect Podcast. After building and learning from failures,
We discovered our ethos and leveraged it
to scale, sell, and build again our seven-figure businesses.
whether you're starting out or leveling up.
This podcast is your source for innovation and lasting impact.
Welcome, listeners, to the Strategic HR Show. Very excited about this podcast today. We have Chelsea Rikis here with us. She's a benefits advisor and recently actually won the 2024 Top Advisor of the Year award. So welcome, Chelsea. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Andy. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, Chelsea, can you give our listeners a quick snapshot about your background, what you do, and some of your current role today?
Yeah. So my first interaction with the American healthcare system, sidebar, I'm Canadian. So my first interaction was when I had a brain injury playing Division I softball. So unfortunately, my senior year, I sustained a brain injury and had to get MRIs and just, interact with the American healthcare system. I ended up having to go back to Canada for a brain injury rehab program, and the medical bills followed me up there. And it was a very difficult time in my life where you're 22. I thought I was going to med school. I thought my whole future was in front of me and ready to go. And then all of a sudden it stopped. And now I had medical debt and I had no idea what a deductible was. I thought I had insurance, thought it would be covered. And then I experienced what 1 in 12 Americans experience, which is the pressure of medical debt and not knowing how to navigate our system. So that ignited a pretty big fire in me. I opened a first agency where I worked for Colonial Life. I was one of the youngest agency owners in the country. And then very quickly realized that I didn't want to work for one insurance company. I wanted to be an independent advisor who could access the entire market. So I partnered with my now husband. Our relationship did actually start, though, as purely professional. So that was about 10 years ago now. And we own Ethos Benefits together. And we consult mid to large market employers nationwide on a true healthcare strategy. So that means putting together a financially sustainable healthcare plan that correlates low cost with higher quality care. So it's a very specific kind of program that we designed, but essentially it's to combat the rising costs of healthcare for employers.
Yeah, and that's definitely a big topic. We hear it every day from business owners to HR senior leaders in every company. And it is one of the biggest costs that companies incur. And so, benefits is definitely a significant issue and a topic in HR. Everybody's trying to solve for it, the best way to save cost on there, plus bring very good coverage to their employees because it obviously affects the type of people that they employ and the how sticky they are in the organization and all that. And so, before we dive into all the details, because I have a lot of questions for you, what do you see as really the big issue right now that is facing employers when they go the normal route of just working with their normal broker or reaching out to the big insurance providers and going through the plans? And what do you want to leave them with as far as like your experience and how to actually manage that specific topic?
So there is a tidal wave of transparency coming in our industry. And, if you watch the news, you've seen the No Surprises Act, the Consolidated Appropriations Act passed in 2021. And that's all about transparency as well. So when I say transparency, I'm talking about two things specifically within a benefits program. Number one, you need to be able to access your claims data. So when you're in a fully insured program, like let's say you're working directly with a carrier, whether it's Cigna, Blue Cross, United, Aetna, a lot of the times the way that fully insured programs work is you want to think of it like a closed box. So you cannot open the box, and inside of the box is all the financial accounting on your plan, right? The high cost prescriptions, every single dollar being spent is in that box. It's the transparency in accounting. So being able to see your claims data is like having a credit score. And if you can't see your claims data, what happens at your renewal is you're told, well, you had bad claims this year. You had a NICU baby, you had a cancer, you had a high cost drug. but you don't know what's actually being paid for those claims. What are the cost of those claims? Not what's being billed, which is what employers will see on that report from their carriers, but what is the actual cost and what is being paid? So you can't see that in a fully insured program, right? Box is closed. When you move over to what's called a level funded or a self-funded program, that box opens. And now you can peek inside and you have full financial accounting on every single dollar being spent within your plan. And that is what I mean when I say healthcare transparency within your plan design. Only when you have that transparency is the only time that you can sit in the driver's seat and start to control costs long term and also pull different levers to lower the cost of those claims. Because the only thing that matters, and employers, if you stop listening to the podcast, that's fine, but take this one note before you leave. One thing, all that matters is the cost of claims. It doesn't matter if you have high claims. You don't let brokers tell you, oh, your claims are bad. This isn't the year to be innovative. This isn't the year to do anything. That's actually the time that you need to do it, because the only thing that matters is what are you paying for each claim. So that's one part of transparency. The second part of transparency that is super important is how much is your broker, consultant, or advisor being paid? Direct and indirect. What does that mean? Direct is maybe a fee from the employer to the advisor. Maybe it's a per employee per month fee from the carrier to the advisor. Maybe it's commission from the carrier to the advisor. Indirect compensation is bonuses, trips, steak dinners, right? Like all those things matter and they need to be disclosed to the employer per the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2021. And I will tell you, I have so many examples, and if you want me to share some stories, I will, of compensation being hidden from employers. Because if you knew what some of these places are making off of these simple, non-innovative programs, you would be very surprised and probably very disappointed.
Yeah, that's definitely a big one. Transparency today is important everywhere. Employees are asking for it, employers are asking for it, and it's only fair because once you know what everything looks like in the box, then they can make the right decisions. And now with data and AI and analysis, there's a lot of innovation that could happen if they have the full picture. But if the
Mhm.
full picture is hidden, then you're obviously missing out on a big piece of what that looks like and how can we solve for it.
Yeah.
You mentioned about, creating a plan where they're self-insured and
Mhm.
setting up that. Is there a certain size of company that you recommend that approach for, like once they hit certain number of employees to move to that route, or does it apply to all?
Well, it depends who you talk to. So there are advisors or brokers out there that will self-insure down to 10 insured.
Hmm.
And we've actually done it. So our smallest self-insured client right now, I think, is like 55 insured. And our largest is north of 10,000. So what really matters more is the culture of the company, the open-mindedness, we'll say, of the HR team and the CFO to think a little bit differently about solving their problems. And ultimately, is the cost of healthcare a problem? And kind of like you alluded to in the beginning of this conversation, the majority of businesses out there, it's really funny. It's a top healthcare specifically is a top three expense usually for a business, but is it a problem, right? Like I've met companies where we've brought in $2 million savings, but their broker is the owner's buddy from childhood. And they're like, yeah, there's just nothing we can do. So that's, at that point, the cost isn't a problem for them. They're going to choose a relationship and what they know, right, over $2 million. So clearly it's not a problem. But there are a lot of companies out there that they need the savings this year for whatever reason, right? Cash
Hmm.
flow, inflation, maybe they got a 40%. We see that a lot, 40% increases. And that's when they call us and they're like, hey, remember when you came in a couple years ago and we weren't ready because of that relationship? Well, the relationship isn't worth $4 million now. So, but that need, right? Like that need of you're tired of playing the renewal game. And what do I mean by renewal game? If this is your experience, it's time to kind of, slowly start thinking about the fact that there's something better for you out there. So the renewal game experience is maybe you hear from your broker 4 or 5 months out from renewal, and they say that they're negotiating, and then they tell you, hey, the first renewal came in at 25%, but don't worry, I'm going to get it down. And then they come back to you and it's at 16. Oh, and then they come back and they say, if we do a no look means we're not going to market the plan. If you just sign today, we can get it down to 8. And, industry trend right now is 12, and you're going to hear all this crap. Um, and then, you're pushed into a corner almost to make a decision. Time's running out. You never actually got a copy of your renewal. It's all just been verbal or an email or on a spreadsheet from the broker. Because here's the deal, employers, without a copy of your own renewal from the carrier, you could not market that with anybody else. So it's the oldest trick in the book. We'll talk a bit soon about like brokers versus advisors, but a broker tactic is to hold the renewal for as long as possible. Because if you get to the point where you're 90, 60 days out from renewal, it's going to be really tough to get any other options. And that's the renewal game, right? It's hiding the renewal, it's the negotiations, not giving you a copy of it, timing you out essentially of actually making real change or taking steps in the right direction.
Yeah, well, that's a great insight and definitely some great knowledge there. And that brings me to my next question, which I wanted to ask is, you know, Chelsea, you're an advisor with FutureSolve and you do it under Ethos Benefits as well. What is the big difference between an advisor and a broker? Like, how is it different? How does it help companies? And really it's, you're talking about savings is a big thing. I mean, even our founders that have been, chief HR officers of many big companies in the past, the big thing is when they actually jumped into a new role as a senior HR person is can they unlock some savings in the benefits area because that opens up a very big budget to use on other things that could bring efficiency or make it matter a difference for people. And even the employees didn't struggle. They actually got a better plan sometimes
Oh
for a
yeah.
lower cost. And so I love that. So let's talk about the advisor and the benefit differences. But I do acknowledge that definitely looking at savings there is really important. It actually could unlock some really interesting savings for HR.
Yeah. So to your point, the HR team, obviously they could use more financial resources always. That's, we've consulted hundreds of mid to large market companies across the country. Every single HR department can use more financial resource, right? But to your point with employees, what we've seen a lot is employees have stopped contributing to their 401ks and their financial futures because they have to offset these increases in medical every single year. So here's the biggest difference between a broker, employee benefits broker, and an employee benefits advisor. And know this, people can call themselves whatever they want. There's no legal term. There's nobody actually monitoring what benefit consultants are calling themselves. You could quite literally have an AFLAC agent who only knows how to sell accident, disability, and life insurance, calling themselves a benefits consultant, right? So know that there's no governing body of these terminologies, but you can tell who is what by the actions they take and how they represent you. So what I mean by that is a broker in my world is getting paid from the insurance company. So in my mind, we work for who pays us, right? Your employees, HR, CFOs, they work for you because you write their paycheck. If Florida Blue or Blue Cross Blue Shield or Cigna or United is writing my check, I kind of work for them, right? As much as I'm representing you and I might have all the best intentions in the world, if my money's coming from them and the way that I pay my team's salaries is dependent on the commission and the bonuses that I need from those carriers, I'm a broker because you can have the best intentions in the world, but who are you getting paid by? When do you get paid? How much do you get paid? So compensation disclosures, I've already mentioned it, they're mandatory. And here's the kicker. This is what drives me absolutely nuts about employee benefits and the broker-employer relationship. The law, the legislation penalizes the employer for not having compensation disclosures on record, proof that they did due diligence, fiduciary responsibility proof, when really that should be coming from the broker. So if the broker doesn't give the HR a compensation disclosure, the HR might never think of it. But if you get audited and you don't have that compensation disclosure, the penalties are on the employer, right? So a broker is going to be They might bring you really innovative programs. Again, they're not bad people. They have the best intentions, but they're getting paid from the carrier. They're probably accepting bonuses, and incentives are not aligned. That's the key. Incentives are not aligned, because here's what happens when you make commission. Let's say your annual premium is $10 million for your healthcare. Your broker is probably making 5 to 7% commission. Well, next year, now it's 10.5 million. They're making that same 5 to 7% commission. That's an increase in compensation, right? How does that make any sense? The employer's losing, but the broker's making more money.
Yes.
So the advisor, on the other hand, is going to work for a fee. And a lot of the times we will even do performance-based compensation. So we're so confident, and there's other people like us. We're not the only ones out there doing this. There are consultants or advisors out there that will take a flat fee per month. So it's paid from the company, so from the HR company to us. We invoice, right? So the commission is stripped out of the plans, which lowers the rates of the healthcare. And at the end of the year, we'll say, hey, if we save you X, you are welcome to give us a bonus on that. And then we are driven and our incentives are aligned to save you more money, to look for high cost drugs that we could ship from Canada, to look for lower cost procedures, to look for centers of excellence. So that's what I mean when I say aligning incentives. An advisor or consultant, the incentives are aligned, they're transparent, they're giving you your compensation disclosures, and they're truly working in your best interest and sitting on the same side of the table as you, because they're not getting paid any differently if it's Aetna, if it's UHC, if it's Blue Cross. They're making the same amount every single year and hopefully being incentivized to bring you even better results.
Exactly. The bigger the results it's for the company, then the more the advisor is making versus on the
Yeah.
other side, if they, still shop around and give you a good deal, but the rates went up, their bonus went up, or their commission went up. In this case, you're stripping that out, you're getting the savings, and also as you increase savings, you can provide an advisor a bonus, which helps with that. And I totally concur. I mean, aligning the strategy and where you're getting paid and how you're getting paid to the savings, not to the increase, makes a huge
Yeah.
difference when you're looking at that.
We just had a recent example. One of our clients went through a merger. It was a merger. It felt like an acquisition, but it was a merger. And there was three different entities. The largest one, which we are the consultants for, have, I think, 1,200 or 1,500 employees, and they were going to merge with a smaller company. Well, it ended up being kind of a competitive situation because obviously the advisor at the other company didn't want to let it go. They are a large publicly traded agency, huge name, everybody would know them. And they basically just came in and said, well, we have a bigger name, right? And so we got a chance to go head to head, which was super exciting for me because it's pretty, I'll share another story in a bit about sort of the incentives of larger agencies. A lot of the times the incentives are to place as much business with certain carriers as possible to maximize bonus, especially these huge companies, right? And there's just a misconception in healthcare in general that bigger is better. Like a bigger hospital has better quality. Could not be further from the truth. Like if you look at the data,
Mhm.
bigger brokers, better benefits, also further from the truth. Usually there's more misalignments, the
Mhm.
bigger the entity, right? Or the bigger the business. So, long story short, we're looking through the compensation disclosure from this other broker to this smaller client, and it says $35 per employee per month fee, which is absolutely fair. Honestly, maybe even a little bit low for that size company. I'm like, okay. And then in the tiniest little italic print, it says the agency receives a 5% bonus on annual premium. And when we did the math, it doubled the compensation. At which point it was way too high for the type of program that it was. It was literally like a shelf product. There's hardly any service whatsoever.
Yes.
But the group had absolutely no idea. No
Mhm.
idea.
Mhm.
So it's things like that you need to look for. It's like, and I'm happy that they even disclosed it because most brokers aren't necessarily even disclosing that. But
Yeah.
nobody talked about it. It was just in
Mhm.
a little fine print.
Yes. These are golden nuggets for sure for people to look for and look for the fine print and read through. And if you don't know what to read through or even where to look, call Chelsea. I mean, I think Chelsea can help with the analysis and understanding of what those fees are, what they look like, and how it compares because, she's the expert.
Well, we have, and I respect the fact that there are a lot of people out there, a lot of brokers. There's a ton of brokers, and I never want to say that any of them are have ill intention because they don't. Really, what it comes down to is it's just a lack of knowledge.
Mhm,
And the truth is our industry, the health insurance brokerage industry, has been incredibly rewarded for being mediocre
mhm,
because of misaligned incentives, right? Like the carriers, if you're getting paid by the carriers, they want you. You literally have to retain a certain amount of business every single year with a carrier to get a bonus. And, if we're talking smaller market clients, there's no other way to even like break even on the amount of service that goes in without taking these bonuses. That's the reason we don't do small business is it's
mhm,
it's just a very difficult value proposition for
mhm.
and not in alignment with what we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like it's not a character thing, it's not an integrity thing. It's literally the way the system is designed. So my recommendation is on our website, and you can email me for it too. Just use our compensation disclosure form. If you have not been given one from your current broker, or if you've been given one, but it doesn't include indirect compensation or something like that, I have a template. It doesn't have our logo on it or anything like that. All you need to do is give it to your consultant or your broker and say, hey, do you mind filling this out? And also get it for 2022, 2023, 2024, and make sure you have it for your upcoming renewal because you should have had it since 2022. But go ahead and use that and see what's going on and make sure you have it on file.
Yeah, awesome. And so that brings us to my other question is, some of the roadblocks we talked about. Sometimes it's the relationship, or sometimes it's the history that they've been with us for so long, or the fear of change.
Yeah.
How do you work with organizations on, addressing the roadblock and the best way to even take an initial step? Is it that form? Is it maybe just understanding where they are and then seeing if there's even some benefit or savings that could be unlocked that they were not aware of? Just something that we can tell, company owners or, senior HR people of where to start.
Yeah. The biggest lie to ever plague American businesses is that there's nothing you can do to control the cost of your healthcare. And that is the roadblock. The roadblock is hospitals, brokers, pharmacy benefit managers. Every single piece of our healthcare system profits immensely off of HR and employers believing 5% is a good year,
Mhm,
10% is a great year, medical trend, there's nothing I can do to control this cost. Everybody in the system is profiting off of employers believing this lie.
mhm,
And the truth is it's not true. It doesn't have to be true. There are when you lean into transparency and you design transparent health programs and you work with somebody that actually has your best interest at heart, you will see that you can not only lower costs but stabilize them.
mhm,
And it's yes, lowering costs is very important, but the stabilization piece, when you look at a historical analysis, we do this with prospects. We'll look at the last 5 years of their how many employees do they have enrolled, what was the broker compensation over the last 5 years, what was the annual premium, the per employee per year cost. We'll do an entire kind of historical financial analysis to get a good picture because here's what happens. 5 years ago, maybe they got a 5% increase. And then maybe the next year was flat. And then the next year was 25%. And then the next year was 10. And then the next year was 8. Right. And like year by year, they can swallow these 8s, these 10s, these 5s. You get a little pissy on the 25%, obviously, right? But you're still like, well, we had a flat renewal the year before.
mhm,
Healthcare costs are rising. You're believing that lie, right? That status quo lie. When you look at it over 5 years, you're like, uh-oh, can we keep doing this for another 5 years? Like that is unsustainable. So when you paint that 5 year picture and you project it forward, it's scary, right? If the business doesn't have plans to grow their revenue, 2x, 3x what the likelihood of those increases are that are coming, it's unsustainable. And that is when brokers say, all right, well, we need to get a more narrow network. Let's offer an HMO. Let's teach employees not to go to the hospital, to go to urgent care instead. Like there's all these things that, we tell employers, add an HSA as your base plan, a high deductible health plan with an HSA. We are financially robbing employees instead of just figuring out a better way to do it. And it exists. It's out there and it's not that hard.
Yeah, yeah, couldn't agree more. Thank you for that. What is one piece of advice that you'd like to leave people with? I know, there's a lot of change happening. We talk a lot about the future of work, where we're going, all of that. Where are you seeing it going in the future, and how can people or companies start preparing for that from where you sit today, Chelsea?
Two things. The future of employer-sponsored healthcare is going to be all about fiduciary responsibility. So Johnson and Johnson, they have 140,000 employees. They've just been sued by their employees, specifically with regards to their health plan and how the employee dollars are not being prudently managed. So that legislation that I keep talking about, the Consolidated Appropriations Act, requires that employers act with fiduciary duty and prudence over employee dollars. And there's literally attorneys that are seeking out employees at mid and large market employers to see, is their employer being a fiduciary with their health plan dollars? And if they're not, hence the health plan lawsuits that are coming. So we're speaking at actually 3 huge conferences in the next 3 months, teaching HR specifically how to protect yourself from this fiduciary obligation, how to show due diligence, what types of processes do you need to be putting your broker through, your vendors through. When you make your renewal decision, how do you document it appropriately? So even if you decided not to go with the lowest cost option, how did you document your decision-making process to show fiduciary prudence? So those are all types of things that is where this industry is headed. We're headed towards transparency. And unfortunately, what that means for employers, there's more responsibility. There's more responsibility to do the right thing, to document. And that's why partnering with the right organization is just absolutely critical. The last thing I'll say, because I know I've talked a lot today, but I'm super passionate, so I apologize. The easiest way for employers to learn about this without, getting too in the weeds, we just produced a healthcare documentary. It's going to be on Amazon or Netflix later this year, but I can send anybody who wants it the link. It's called It's Not Personal, It's Just Healthcare. And it's not about brokers, it's not about us, it's industry experts. So hospital CEOs, nurses, whistleblowers on large insurance companies, all these experts got together to, in layman's terms, explain what's actually happening in the employer-sponsored market when you peel back the curtain and how to fix it. So they're basically exposing the lie that there's nothing you can do about the cost of your health care and showing you in 90 minutes, actually less than that, how to fix it. And it is incredible. We just did a screening in Orlando. We're doing another one in Nashville in a month. We'll be going across the country doing screenings for employers. And the responses are mind-boggling. And here's why. It's not somebody like me, right? Like, I have good intentions. I am a fiduciary. I am going to work on the best interest of the employer, but I'm still coming to them as a salesperson, right? This documentary doesn't have any sales in it whatsoever. It's just true education. And I think that is the most powerful way to teach employers. So if anybody would like a link to that documentary, please just reach out. No strings attached. It's yours. And I'd love your feedback. Super, super exciting with the documentary.
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning that, Chelsea. It was on my list to make sure we tell a little bit about it. And we will actually also happy to be sending it. So if somebody reaches out to FutureSolve asking for the documentary, Chelsea, you shared the link. I can also send it directly to our listeners as well. So feel free to reach out to myself or Chelsea for the documentary. I've seen it. It's an amazing piece of work. The quality of the documentary is amazing. Great experts that you brought. So congratulations on that. And I can't wait for it to hit the big market
Oh,
through Amazon and Netflix.
I know. And I really think it's just going to take this movement of transparency one step further. So I'm super excited.
Absolutely. Well, Chelsea, I know there's a lot of listeners that want to hear more, and I wish we had all the time in the day to go through all the topics today about health benefits. But if somebody wanted to reach out to you and maybe even consult with you on ways to save some costs through their healthcare programs and bring some great quality to their employees, where should they go next?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Chelsea Rykis, Ryckis, or you can email me at chelsea@ethosbenefits.com, and I'd be happy to help.